Hi guys, Nomis here, and welcome back to Nomishavn. And now it's episode 16. Last time I built a cathedral and cemetery behind Bjorgvin, and expanded the area along the waterfront nearby it, including putting down the old town hall. A lot of old buildings in a dense and chaotic manner along the waterfront. For today's build, I have quite a lot of builds and we'll be splitting it up in parts, but the entire waterfront of this district will be finally filled out. And I'll also be building something on the island around here, which I will be terraforming quite a bit to change its shape. First off, I'm building another small river cargo harbor with some light industry offices, parking lots and container storage, which will increase the network of these smaller harbors to 3, and hopefully goods can be transported along quite efficiently off the roads by now. After finishing this, I start setting up some fishing harbors, which will be the main industry at this end of the river, and I'll also prepare some bridges, a road bridge to the island and extending out the metro tracks coming from the station around Hansa Stadium, as this metro line will continue elevated across the river, and I need to have those tracks in now to kind of have a view of how I can build around them and also plan fishing and ship paths around it. I'm also going to be building some older residential buildings along the sloped road that goes directly behind the harbor, which connects the waterfront to the upper level of the district. Close by the harbour and fishing industry, I'm building out some more residential development, which will show buildings from a couple different eras. Some Asiatic style buildings that can be from anywhere from the 1300s to 1700s, and some newer wooden buildings that's probably from the early 1900s, or possibly later even. You might have seen I included some sports grounds, small ones around here, and I think that's important for a neighborhood, and I'll include a few more around here as I progress the build. While I'm included smaller piers and docks for boats to park up all along the waterfront, I haven't yet built out a proper marina, which I think is a perfect fit right here next to the fishing docks and a river harbour. When I say a proper marina, that means including facilities for boat maintenance, like a boat crane that can get boats out of the water for repairs, a boat ramp to get them back in the water, and of course a few jacked up boats around that have maintenance to be done. Of course I'll also include a little spot on the docks with some gas pumps for the boats, which will be where everyone in this district and possibly other districts of the city come to fill up gas for their boats. I'm also adding a little pier with a marina club that has a little bar and some outdoor seating, something I've seen in plenty of other marinas. It just adds to this being a place to hang out if you got a boat. Around the bigger port cities in Norway that had big fishing industries, they had these at the time big wooden buildings, which I don't know if they have a proper name in English, but directly translated it would be something like sea shed or sea house. Essentially the purpose of those buildings were the storage of fish, and some of them were also used for fish production. For example, when canned fish started becoming popular, some of these buildings were used to produce that, as well as also serving as lodging for traveling merchants and eventually some of them developed into other industrial uses and workshops in the 18th and 19th centuries. Because of this use, they were built right on the water edge, often just on top of stilts, so that the fishing boats could just pull up right at the building and load off the fish directly from their boat. Those buildings had some kind of manual crane outside the window of the upper floors, which was pretty much just a wooden joist with a rope attached to it, so that the crates of fish could just be pulled out that way. This was also the case in Nomishavn, as it has a rich history when it comes to the fishing industry, and like in Norway, many of these buildings still stand today as historically protected buildings, the oldest of them since the 1600s. While they don't serve the same purpose anymore as the industry has modernized when it comes to storage and production, the buildings are preserved as an important part of history. Today they are used as offices, hotels, restaurants, bars and even some apartments. With how they sit right at the edge of the water, they are highly sought after locations. To achieve this in the game, I've copied some of the corner buildings I have PO'd together earlier in pairs of 4 and just put some windows over the doors facing out to the waterfront. For the stilts, I've just put a network of piers all along, as I've also done elsewhere to get the same effect. And lastly, to get the manual crane I mentioned, I used a gallows asset from the workshop and just removed most of it with procedure objects to get just the one rope and wooden joist. I'll add in some suitable details as well as giving each of them some small wooden docks that looks very old and worn compared to the more modern boat docks. Being a city surrounded by water, it is no surprise that rowing has always been a popular sport in Nomishavn, and the most prominent of them is Kaigaten Roklubb, or Kaigaten Rowing Club in English. It was founded in the 1850s, right after Nomishavn became a fully independent city-state, and is the oldest in the city, which explains its prime location on the historical waterfront in Bjorgvin. This is where most of the rowers competing for Nomishavn in the Olympics and other international competitions come from. I make sure to place the asset so that it likes perfectly to take the boats straight out into the river, with a lot of rowing boat props lying around and of course with its own little pier in front. The empty space behind it I'll make into a little plaza with a statue, possibly of the founder of the club. After I finish this, I go on to just finish off the residential expansion I did around here, with some more of the buildings I've used before. Just placed tightly together in some organic shapes, with a lot of plant spikes and so on dotted around, so it looks really lived in, as well as a few first floor shops fused into them to give them that mixed use look. this island over here is where I always imagined the old fortress of the city would be located, fortified with walls along the water around the whole premise. Well, I'm still gonna do that. I decided that the island is far too large for the fortress to encompass the entire thing. The fortress was built in the early 1300s by the Swedish royal family as their residence in the city shortly after they claimed the city in a war with Norway. Because of the conflict surrounding the important port city, they built their residence on an island to be fortified on all sides, with an unusually large number of towers. Because of the lucrative fishing industry here, the royal family built a large number of these sea sheds all along the waterfront of the land that was free after building their fortress, in order to increase their income here. Eventually more and more houses were built in the land between them, and this half of the island almost became like its own little fishing village, complete with a town square and market in the middle of the narrow streets between the packed houses. The island was named Kongsholmen, which would mean something like the King's Islet in English. Most of the sea shells remaining today lies on this island, and it is still today a very dense residential neighborhood, but it also has a few offices and restaurants within the sea sheds, as well as smaller shops and bars, mostly situated around the town square. First off, I just lay out the general layout of buildings and come back to finish the detailing. In the middle of building this, I noticed the rapid expansion of population lately has taken a toll on the education demand. So I went back and demolished some houses to make place for a new high school and elementary school. Going back to the island village, I'm finishing all the detailing to get in all of what I mentioned before. Just a different cobblestone surface to create some variety from across the bridge. And of course I'll add the marketplace, some outdoor seating for the bars and restaurants, small old shop signs and generally other props to make the place come alive. Lastly, I'll add some bus stops props for a new line that goes out here, and also adding a very simple ferry pier on one side of the island. After ending the bus line, I noticed it was insanely busy, and this place was pretty much too dense to only be served by buses. I think at this point there are like 6,500 people living in just this small area. So I added an underground station that I will do some detailing on. I was really uncertain on which line to get out here, and I decided to make a small branch line on the M2 green line. This is a line coming from the terminus station out to Henrik Wessel Place and to the Hansa football stadium. So this branch of the line goes underground to stop here instead of going to the stadium, and it shares the tracks of the main line for the rest of it. For the look of the station, I am doing something similar to Bjorgvin, just very toned down compared to it. Filling out the whole fortress area, I don't have one particular fortress in mind, but rather I just combined some things I've seen from different castles and fortresses around Europe. The idea is that this place has changed through the centuries, so you have the medieval castles, chapels and other buildings walled off alone in the middle, some ruins close to the entrance, and a baroque building which I imagine has had some military use historically, but is probably mostly a museum of another time by now. The main thing I want is to have a lot of open grass areas and winding paths around the whole complex lined by trees, something I've seen in other places. And I also make sure to have some stairs connecting to the upper level of the castle walls. At the very end I'll also add a few cannons because I forgot to add it right now. While I've generally built out how the fortress stands today, I'm giving it a temporary purpose. There is a music festival arranged inside the fortress every year, called Nomishavn. Inspiration for this is a festival called Bjorgvin, which is a music festival held within the old fortress of Bjorgvin in Norway. So to build this, I'm using this festival as well as other festivals I've been to as reference. Because the festival is essentially in the middle of the city, there's no tent camps or anything around here, and all the historical buildings are closed off by temporary fences. Like Bjorgvin, it has several stages split around the area. I think it's about 5 stages I add, including the festival area from concerts DLC. Behind all the stages I will do some detailing to make it look like a backstage. Lots of crates, music equipment and some tents where the artists get ready. In addition to this, there will be a lot of portable toilets, bars right by every stage. There's also a main food court with some benches and its own bar, and of course all the food stalls, maybe some food trucks and things like that. The last thing I'm adding to the festival is some smaller amusement park assets. Thought this would be a fun addition, and I'm sure I've seen something like this at other festivals. So that is it for today's build. It was quite a large build today, so I really appreciate it if you stuck along this far. A thumbs up would be much appreciated if you liked the video, as well as a comment if you have any thoughts. Praise or criticism are equally welcome. And of course, if you'd like to see more of this content, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned for some cinematics.